Hello, everybody, and welcome to Fearlessly Authentic. I'm your host, Jody Harrison Bauer, and it is always such a joy to have you listening to the show every single week. 100 countries listen to this show. It is crazy, and I love hearing from you. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. We have a 5-star rating, and it's because of you all writing and listening and sharing it. So any place you listen to podcasts, any streaming podcast platform, I would really appreciate it. And you could also see me and my guests on YouTube. So same name, Jody Harrison Bauer, subscribe, and then you could check us out and see what we look like, not just listen to our voices. And something else that I've been, well, if you're new to the show, let me just tell you what it's about. It's called Fearlessly Authentic. And I named it that because I was always afraid of taking risks. And now I am much, much better at taking risks and always striving to be as authentic as I possibly can. But sometimes we get scared to do that. So what I like to do every single week, either with myself or with my guests, is to educate you, empower you with this knowledge that you're going to learn from my guest this week, entertain you a little bit. I'm sure this man is going to entertain you, and then inspire you to go and take this knowledge and help other people. So I have one last thing, and then we're going to get into the show. I've talked to you all for probably the past year and a half since I turned 60. So I'm now 61 and almost a half. And I started going plant-based after I turned 60 with Sakara. So they have plant-based meals that are delivered to your home, but they also have lots of other products like metabolism powder and so on. They have an energy bar and they have a detox bar. They have lots of wonderful products to make you feel better. So if you would like to try it, I promise you it will make a difference in your life. Use my code XOJODY, Jodi, and go to sakara.com. That's SAKARA.com, XOJODY, and save 20% on your first order. And on with the show. Here we go. My guest today. Hi, Jake. How are you?
Good, Jody. How you doing?
I'm so glad to have you here. Jake Fraczek. There we go.
Yeah, you got it, girl.
I said it right. I'm going to read a little bit about you so my listeners know who we are talking to today. And I just can't wait to get right into it. See, as soon as I put on my glasses, you're like, okay, definitely. So Jake has just come out with a new book. It's been released already, right?
Yeah, it came out about a month ago.
Okay, all right. It was released about a month ago. So best-selling author and Damaged Good podcast host and musician Jake Fraczek is set to release. He's already released it, his newest book, a hilarious collection of essays titled The Waiting Room, which is his follow-up to his first book, QUICKSAND. Both books are autobiographical and grounded in the backstory of heartache, ego, which we talked about the other day, and now in The Waiting Room, the painful loss of his father. Jake writes with the approach of an Irish funeral. I have to ask you about that. Being Jewish, I don't really understand what that means, because we Jewish people are very serious about everything. Laughing through the rough parts with celebration and comfortable in his vulnerability. His dark comedic elements blend with his unique perspective and rare life experiences to create vivid tales of gallivanting shame, debauchery that are at times strikingly relatable and at others humorously outlandish. And I got that feeling from you yesterday when we were speaking to get ready for the show today, that you had a lot of stories. So tell me a little bit about first, like growing up. I know you have an interesting childhood. You grew up partially in Massachusetts and in Nevis, right? So tell us about that.
Nevis first. Well, really first for about a few months on this island called Montserrat, which is a small island in the West Indies. My father owned a nightclub bar that had like live music, some food, and there's a very big recording studio on that island at the time. So lots of famous musicians from America, from England were going down there recording. They'd play at the club. It was a wild time. This is the 70s going into the early 80s. So lots of nefarious activity and what have you may have been lurking. Yes. And when I was really young, we had to move from Montserrat to Nevis, which is also, Nevis and St. Kitts are sister islands in the Caribbean, not far away from Montserrat. So I really grew up in Nevis. I was so young in Montserrat. And then about 5 years old, we moved to Massachusetts for like good. That's both of my parents are from Springfield and Boston, respectively. And would go back and forth to the West Indies for long periods of time. I'd even go back to school there, but we were in Massachusetts, bouncing around. And that would be my younger days. Yeah.
So Nevis was just about 5 years of that upbringing, and
solid, but a lot of time going back though. I mean, even up until I was 15, going back solidly, you know.
It's so beautiful there.
I'm surprised you went. That blew me away when I heard that you went there, because it's
not a long time ago. I think I went there, you know, when I was married to my ex-husband, like for our 10-year anniversary or something like that. I don't really remember, but it was a long time ago. It was after a bad hurricane, but it was beautiful. The people were amazing. The beaches were gorgeous. The food was delicious. So, you know, I can't even imagine living in that paradise. So as a youngster, growing up, you were a huge skateboarder, musician. Tell us about, you know, how the skateboarding. A lot of people your age were really into skateboarding.
Yeah, I mean, my knees are a testament to that. I grew up in Boston and Massachusetts in general. A lot of the men in my family, real old school, you know, like hardworking men, you know, whatever side of the tracks they were on. And so sports is big. And I played sports as a kid, but I was always like, I spent a lot of time alone. You know, I didn't have any immediate siblings. I had stepsisters and shit, but I was alone a lot. And I had a big imagination. I was really into painting and drawing, art. And I hated, I definitely got this from my father. I struggled with authority. So that didn't just mean like teachers and parents, but coaches. And you got to be on a sports team with a bunch of kids that I'm not necessarily friends with. We have to be together because we're on this team and the coach is telling me what to do. And I just fucking
hated it.
I hated it. And I wanted to be into stuff that whatever I was going to be into was going to be something where, you know, limited amount of authority. Even art classes in school, you know, I still had a teacher, but whatever. But I got into skateboarding from my cousin when I was 10, and it just sucked me in for so many reasons. One is you couldn't learn it in school. There was no authority. Nobody, like my older people in my family didn't like it. It was something I would do alone, and I was out in the street skateboarding, and it taught me a lot about myself, a lot of self-confidence, how to rely on myself, and made really quality friends, kids I had more in common with than just that we lived on the same street or we went to the same school or on the same Little League team. So yeah, that was my shit for about 10 years. You know, skateboarding was like everything.
Right, because you could do it by yourself. I mean, it's just fun. You can challenge yourself. You can be as fearless as possible. And nobody's around there telling you not to do it because you're just out with your buddies and you're doing it. And nobody's telling you, no, you can't do this.
So some security guards and police officers might argue, but that was another element I liked. I don't know why I have this streak in me. Well, I do know why. It's my parents and their DNA. I kind of like, I'm attracted to things that have an element of danger, but also that maybe it's not allowed, you know? So skateboarding in the street, you know, the skate parks, and now everywhere I look, especially in California, there's a skate park. But growing up where I did at the time, there wasn't. So we skated in the city or in the suburbs or in anywhere. We'd go to a college and skate there. And, you know, security and cops, and you got like jocks chasing you and homeless people and crackheads. And there was a lot of people to interact with. So we would stick very tightly together, which I loved. And, you know, you were out there, maybe you were being a little bad at times, a little juvenile delinquent, you know, and then as you got older, that might graduate into other things. But I definitely would be lying if I said that element of skateboarding isn't something I really loved as well.
You know, it's so interesting because I have two daughters. They're 29 and 33. They never skateboarded. I have two sisters. I was never involved in that whole skateboard thing, but I find it interesting that it was such a passion, you know, and I feel like just hearing you talk is that, you know, besides not loving authority figures, I'm sort of the same way, but I didn't rebel until I was in my 40s. Okay. Again, that's why fearlessly authentic, but I feel like I've realized that I'm a restless soul. Do you feel like you're restless? You're always looking for the next challenge?
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like the challenges keep looking for me, even when I want them. When I do feel like I'm not restless, a challenge will come my way that I really wasn't looking forward to. I wanted to chill. I got finally relaxed. So, you know, my mind never really settles. I'm always thinking about something, whether it's being hypercritical of the creative stuff I'm doing, or objectives, like, kind of simple and maybe boring objectives I have to do in life, like getting a car fixed or something.
Right.
But like, I'm always thinking about it. It's hard for my brain to quiet down, which has its pluses and minuses. But yeah, I am always restless. I like to travel a lot. I get to travel for work sometimes. So I'm always needing to bounce around. I like switching my environment up. I need things to kind of excite me,
Right. Yeah. I'm totally, somebody said to me, Jody, you're always, you're that person who's always looking for the shiny, what is it, the shiny thing? And I'm like, not really, because I stick to one thing. I don't go from thing to thing. I don't have ADD, but it's just, yeah, it's always that I'm looking for something to either make myself better or just make myself smarter, or just, challenge myself to like have like the best life ever. I know that sounds so corny, but just like, we're only here for a short period of time. I want to blow it up.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think, there's some people that are more content with I won't say like a monotonous lifestyle, but something that's a little more predictable, a little more stable is a word that some people use positively. You and I and other people may be more of the, like, I like to learn new shit. Even as you get older, I feel like people don't want to learn new things in their 30s and their 40s and as they get older, because it's a challenge to your ego and all that. I taught myself to play guitar when I was 30,
Wow.
When I mean, I've been surfing for about 7, 8 years, and that's something I learned in my early 30s. But I had skateboard skills, but I just like to challenge myself, do new shit. But only because I want to. It's not like I'm just gonna go learn how to do something, ride a bike like backwards or a unicycle. I don't care much about unicycles,
Right. It's stuff you want to do. So you got into music. So you are creative. Clearly, you're a very creative person. So skateboarding was one way for you to express yourself. And then you liked art. So you were creating art. And then music. So take me down that road with the art and the music, because
I think the art was probably my as an artist, like, granted, what I do now, I'm a writer and I do broadcasting, but it's just, that's my canvas right now. I learned that I was always an artist, and I would find different ways to express myself. And visual art was my grandparents, my mother's parents were both like painters. So I got into painting and drawing and pastels and charcoals, and I even messed around with pottery. I have an aunt that's a great potter. I love that. And then that was a way of expressing myself. Skateboarding, I don't look at like a sport. Surfing, it wasn't a sport. To me, it's expression and art.
I agree.
I love music. I like, my mother would drop me off at like these breakdance, these b-boy classes when I was a kid, and I loved that, but that wasn't naturally in my cards, you know what I'm saying? So
right.
I was always into music. I played a little guitar when I was young. I mean, I grew up around music. My parents did. My father used to manage reggae artists.
Oh yeah, that's what you're saying.
A lot of music in the house. And I was always into hip hop, like the breakdancing element and writing graffiti when I was really young. And then I got into like, messing around, emceeing and playing with turntables, DJing, and then, just got so into music. And that was another way of expressing myself, because it was writing.
Right. So did you play an instrument, or you were more of a DJ?
Music just felt, I don't know, the natural progression.
Right. Yeah. Music. Can you sing?
Yeah, not well. I could sing. My range is very limited. Singing, I should say, my range is very limited, but I can write very well for people. So in my band, or I'd write for other people. But like, my vocal range was limited, but I knew not to step out of that realm, because I don't know, like, I was playing to my strengths, but I could make it work for the kind of music I was making. And then I did songwriting for other people. I had a little publishing deal for a while, so write for people maybe outside of the genres I did, or well beyond my skill set. But some people who can sing incredibly well can't write worth of shit. So there's a place to play right there.
Right. I mean, everything that you're talking about, I can't do. I can't do. I can't. Yeah. And I have a very good friend who, every time I sing, she's like, Jody, please don't sing. And then every once in a while I'll hear my voice. I'm like, you know what? It's not that bad, but you know what? It's such a joyful thing. And I think in my next life, I'd love to come back as a singer, not like, in a rock band. Like that's, and anybody who knows me would be like, okay, that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, but I like your voice. I think it's kind of got this slightly raspy element to it in a completely complimentary manner. I like that. I think you're good. Like, I could tell why people would listen to your show, because you would want to listen to somebody with a bad voice for an hour, not at all. So you clearly have a good voice if you can do a show for an hour and you got listeners and fans.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So after you pursued being in a band, DJ, hip hop, all of that, but you were writing, and that's where I want to get to. So you are clearly a very good writer. You've written books, poetry. So in the books, explain to your first book, Quicksand, and then we'll get on to your newest one.
My first book. So when I was younger, I would write college papers for kids, I would always be able to write people's shit, my own shit. It was just
kidding.
Yeah, like it's my family. My grandmother was a public school English history teacher. Pretty good writers. You got to excuse me. I think my neighbor's dog or baby is having a rough time. The windows are shut. If you hear wailing and screaming, just know I would never treat my animals in such a manner. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe they just fed it some bad food. Or
I don't hear anything.
Good. So just pretend nobody heard what I said.
Okay.
But I was, I was still kind of like on my outs with the music industry and emotional level. And I was going through a crazy time in my life, a little like love breakup triangle. I was in a dark place mentally for some other reasons. And I was writing these little poems and short stories as purely like a therapeutic manner to save myself, to save my fucking life at the time. It was just something that helped, like writing music would be a good way to process it. Right. But this was even quicker. I didn't have to have a melody in my head. I didn't have to have an intention for a song, because I was taking music so seriously. This was just purely therapeutic. Wow. And then as time was going on, I started noticing I had like some underlying theme to a lot of the short stories and stuff, which would be this heartache, love triangle, trying to get back with this woman I loved thing. And all these short stories and poems would become my first book, QUICKSAND. And once I noticed I had something kind of connecting all these pieces, I said, dude, why don't you fucking write a book, Snake Man? You've been writing all this other shit your whole life. And then I started, filling it in with more chapters that really tied it together, where the story came together as one. And then I got that book published, and I got a great response from it. And it felt more natural than any of the other artistic endeavors I think I'd ever done. It came easier to me than anything, than skateboarding, than music, than anything.
See, isn't that interesting? Is like the stuff that we think we should be doing, because I've got a few things in my head that I want to do, but I'm not doing it. But yet the things that I want to do, I'm like, yes, this feels good. Yes, this feels good. And then I'm like, oh yeah, somebody told me I was supposed to do that. And I'm like, I don't want to. Yeah. Right. But
that's the way to go, I think. With art, I think I learned that a little later in life too, is I don't really go with the flow with a lot of things, but my artistic drive, I go with the flow, and I really don't like now to go against it. I don't like to sacrifice my artistic integrity and do anything that my heart's not into, because then the product is shitty. I mean, I do some freelance writing work because it's a check, but it's not very inspirational to me. I'm not like really hyped up to do it. But following your gut and your heart. People say, get a motorcycle. You would love motorcycles. I have negative inclination to get a fucking motorcycle. Right. I'm going to do things I want to do, and then they get done better, and I feel better. I'm more gratified,
So tell me about, so you told me that the Quicksand was mostly started because you had a really tough breakup. You were in a bad place.
And I had some other shit going on. I mean, I got like suicidal.
Yeah.
I was doing things. No, it's all right. I mean, I talk about it in the books. I'm all good now. Well, all good as one could be, but
Right. How good is good?
I was going through this breakup, this triangle breakup, and I was having all these things come into my conscious that had never been in my conscious before. Things I had done to people that I really were bad things. And I, for the first time, felt really bad. Like, fuck, dude, you've been living a really, like, a good life, and you're kind, and you've done so many nice things for some people, but you've hurt some people deliberately for your own benefit. And all that shit really was coming together and hitting me so fucking hard. And that's where my brain was spinning. I was going nuts. So the writing was to save me from going completely mad,
I love that. I think, so many people, I go back to when you're talking about all of this, like when we talk about journaling. So me, I've been in the fitness industry for 33 years and been training people for that long, been working out for 40 years. And the thing that always works is when I first have a client who has a goal, I tell them to write these things down, write about what you ate, how you feel, anything, right? Just so I know what you're thinking, because I know that what the hardest thing for us to do is to face our feelings, right? Face it. But when you write it down, it's like verbal vomit on a piece of paper, and then you start feeling better about
Yeah.
what's going on in your life. It's a process, and it's so hard at first to write the first few words. And I was wondering if you felt that process was first so emotional and so hard. Like, that takes a lot of courage to start writing that shit down.
I mean, it wasn't hard to start it. Like, it was flowing like a fresh cut. Like, I couldn't stop.
Really? Wow.
But it didn't make it easy though. It was still hurtful. And the hardest part about any of the writing I do in my books is all personal shit, is the editing. Because now I'm rereading my chapters 10, 12 times over. And like, fuck, man, there's times where I would like sounds kind of silly, but like shed a tear on the computer or something. Like, I had to close the shit. Like, I can't reread this one right now too many times. And I'd have the stories in my head, and I was like, man, when I have to put this one down on paper, it's going to be a task. But I could do the writing easy. It was just, it was, like you said, it was draining. It was exhausting. It's hard,
Yeah. I think so many people want to write about things that happen in their life, myself included. And I've been told by a very close mentor of mine, she's been in my life for like 15 years, write a book, Jody, write a book, write a book. And I've written, there are pieces of paper all over my house, never, because I start writing, I'm like, that was the question I wanted to ask you. Like, you wrote, did you think it was going to become a book? Did you start writing because you thought it was going to become a book, or did you write for your own self-release?
Myself. Yeah, initially it was just for myself to quell the crazy thoughts in my head, to kind of look at it on paper and make sense of it, like you were saying, it helps you process it. But when I did have this like moment of acknowledgement where, okay, I'm going to make a book out of this, all this is tying together, then I started approaching it with a little different eye, because I had a plan, I had a goal, an intention, whatever you want to call it. And so I started cleaning it up, and not like censoring it, but, cutting the fat off. My writing, I try to pride myself on not dancing around with, and I mean, I have, good vocabulary, but not dancing around with so many words. Like, I want it to be poetic and cut right through. And there's some writers that really do that well. There's a lot that I find don't. And I think that's what deters kids my generation from wanting to read. You can say it beautifully, but if you got to jumble it up with all these fancy words, you can have a couple fancy words. You don't need to have 7 of the same adjectives.
I have no patience for all the fancy words.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't. Like, can you just cut to the point here?
Yeah. And it gets in the way of good storytelling.
It does.
A family of storytellers. I mean, my uncles, my father, my mother, my aunts. And so a good story, you cut it all, like I said, you cut all the fat off. You want to grab people right away. So every sentence, my first and last sentence to me of every chapter of the most important, I mean, it's all got to be good, but the first sentence has got to grab you by the fucking neck. It's got to make you want to read. And I really, really made sure that was like a big goal. Everything I was writing was the first sentence of every paragraph, but the first sentence of every chapter was going to grab you right in. I wanted you to feel like you was buckling up for some kind of ride. You don't know where the ride's going to go, but you're going to go. And that was very important to me. That's the kind of writing I like. So that's the kind of writing I do.
Is the book, I know you said it's different stories. I'm sorry that I haven't read it yet. I can't, as soon as we get finished with this, I'm buying it. No. I need to buy it because I love everything that you're talking about. So are they different little stories, or are they poetry? Explain to me exactly what I would get.
It's short stories. It's non-linear. It's like if you watch a movie where they kind of cut back in time and then flash to the future, but it's all connected. It has like a backstory, an underlying theme. It's not just random. It might seem like that for the first 2, but then when you get to the 3rd, the 4th, then you start to see how it connects. Right. And I like movies that play with time like that. So I wanted to do that with the book. I didn't want it to just have that same kind of classic Hollywood arc. I wanted, so you could pick it up anytime and read any chapter. You want to just
love that.
I do too. And that's, I think I want anyone to read my books, but I think the majority of my readers are of my generation and maybe even a little younger, and maybe not, to be honest, big readers. They don't read a lot. Yeah. So I wanted them to grab it and want to read more and not feel like, oh, this is a fucking huge, thick book in high school, be stupid.
Right.
I mean, I didn't like reading when I was little. I hated reading. I never read summer reading for school. I didn't learn to like to read until I was a senior in high school. And I read a couple books that I was like, wow, there's actually shit out there that I'm interested in. I was always force-fed all this crap and told, and maybe it's because I was told you have to read this. This is good, fucking shoving it down your throat. Right. I read books and I was like, wow, there's shit out there I'm interested in. And then I just fucking couldn't stop reading, you know?
And that's the whole thing, that you sound like my oldest daughter. She never wanted to read Cliff
Oh, yeah.
Notes all through high school. And I don't think she started enjoying reading until she was like done with college or something like that. It just takes a while. Quicksand, how did you come up with that name? I'm curious about that. I love the name.
One of the chapters in the book kind of explains how it was about 7 a.m. I'd been up all night, clearly, having like what I thought I did some drugs that had a drug in it that wasn't the drug I was intending to do. And I was freaking out in I was living in a really shitty apartment in LA in a really rough neighborhood. Okay. It was hot as fuck. And it was the Super Bowl that day. I was going to go over to my other friend from Boston's apartment, him and his wife's place, and watch the game. And I couldn't get to sleep. And I hadn't done drugs since about midnight. It's 7 a.m. I'm like, why am I fucking wired? My heart's freaking out. And I felt like I have anxiety and stuff, and it can slip into depression. And I felt like I kept like trying to like calm down, Jake. And the more I try to like relax, the more I felt like I was sinking into this quicksand. Like, you know, quicksand, they say you're not supposed to fight and you sink more.
Yeah.
And that's like, it hit me. And I'd already been writing the book. I was like 3/4 done. I didn't know what I was going to call it. And then that hit me. And I was like, yo, this is not only a chapter, but this is the title of the book. Because that's how I was feeling when I was writing.
Wow. I love that. I love how hyped up and emotional you are. I hope you figured out what drug it was and not to take it anymore.
It was cocaine, but there wasn't cocaine in it. There was something else that was crazy, and did not feel right. So.
Oh my God. All right.
Do drugs, kids.
Yeah. Would you just say don't do drugs?
I said be careful if you do.
Oh, okay.
Shouldn't do them, but if you're going to do them, tread lightly.
I was going to say don't do drugs, kids.
Yeah, don't listen to her.
As you're having a scotch, right?
No, this is white, or this is rosé wine. No,
rosé. Okay.
I haven't drank in like since last Friday.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell me you haven't had a drink in like 5 years.
Oh no! How crazy would that be if I was on your show and I break 5 years? Wow, that's a good compliment to you, though.
All right. Well, we're going to be back. We're going to take a quick break with Jake the Snake Fraczek. See, I said it right.
Yeah, you got it.
Fraczek. Okay. It's really not that hard to say. And we will be right back. Hang in there. We'll be back in like 2 minutes. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I have Jake the Snake Fraczek. I'm calling you that today, just Jake the Snake. I know that's your name. And we're just having a great time here and talking about the books that he has written and his newest book called The Waiting Room. But before we get into that, hi again, Jake. He's here.
Hey, Jody.
I want to talk about your podcast called Damaged Goods. Tell me a little bit about that show.
And disclaimer, I'm not smoking cigarettes, and I would not recommend anybody. This is actually cannabis that looks like a cigarette. So not that you should smoke that either, but Jake the Snake doesn't smoke cigarettes.
And it's not scotch, it's rosé.
Yeah,
drinking. Yes. Early. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's 1 o'clock out there, right?
It is. Something like that. Okay. My podcast, Damaged Goods, I started 5 years ago. Wow. Before I had a radio show. And I did some broadcasting when I was in high school and in college, like on the college radio, high school radio. And I liked it, talking on the air.
Yeah.
And then podcast though, as you know, you don't have the FM radio restrictions. I don't like authority. I don't like censorship. I don't like being restricted too much. So when I had a radio show, it was on Dash Radio, digital radio. And the podcast, I wanted to have conversations with people who worked in the arts, musicians, writers, directors, actors, dancers, chefs, fucking hairdressers, anybody that was creative. You manage a musician, or whatever. And it would be conversations, less interview-like, but more a platform where through these conversations, these stories that would get told, somebody would learn about the art form that this person, my guest, does, or me. And it would be funny, but there would be moments where we touch on heavier shit, things that might have been difficult in their creative process, or this album they worked on, or the movie they made, things that might have left them a little damaged or what have you. Or when I do solo episodes, I'm just like my books, I'm pretty open book. I hate to use the word twice, but and then the podcast. So we might talk about some damaged things, but it's you're laughing through the rough parts, which is
I love that. So you had when you were on the radio, it was live like this.
Yep. And then they replay the episodes later, stuff like that.
Right. So what I think a lot of people don't understand the difference between the podcast and the radio show is that this is like adrenaline. This is
Yeah.
live. We
You
can't
get much
stop.
hyper on the show. And because like I
Yes.
said, it's live. And I loved that we would take callers, we'd have interviews with guests. And I'm really good at off the top of my head. You know, I
Yeah.
public speak at funerals and weddings and what have you. I don't really write shit. And I might not talk to you in the same manner as this. I can adjust it depending on the setting, but on the radio, those are skills that were naturally in my favor. So I loved it. I miss it.
Right. I mean, I love doing this and I love the live. I try to do as many live shows as possible, just because it's more fun to me. I like the adrenaline rush. So let's get into the book, The Waiting Room. Let's start with how you talk about ego, relationships. Well, how did you start this book? Why and how?
The first book came over like a four-year period of writing. And I thought I wanted to write more, but I didn't really know what the underlying theme would be in this new book. Like the first one was redemption, a second chance with a woman I love, heartache. What's going to be the underlying theme in this one? I started penning some chapters, but no real direction. And then my father, who I had an interesting relationship with, got sick with like stage 4 pancreatic cancer. I was, it was out of nowhere. He was a pretty big, strong guy, like my size, healthy. And I dropped everything to go help him. Basically, I had a talk show offer at the time. I dropped a lot, and he lived in Mexico, and I went to go help him.
And you guys weren't close.
We were, yes and no. I mean, we didn't spend a lot of time together, and that was why we were kept as close. We were close in some facets, but when I was young, we were not close.
Okay.
To be frank, I was really scared of the dude when I was little. I didn't really like him. I liked being around my mother, and he wasn't like a bad guy, but he was intense, Okay. But he had really good qualities to him too. I'm not bad mouthing the man at all. I think now more his better qualities shine bright, but I always loved him, and I knew he loved me, even though we didn't express it the right way or say it. But there was a lot of if you ever wanted to see me humble and quiet, be around that man. We're both Aries. He casts a big shadow. He's kind of got some legendary mystique about him, and so around him, I was never my full, and it was just whatever. It wasn't pleasurable. But anyway, he got sick, and he asked me to come, help him, take care of him, and I did. And there's a lot of reasons why. Well, I got, this is right when COVID hit, with my girl, and I was with him the day he got diagnosed. He found out he got diagnosed. He came back to the house. I was like, yo.
Wait, quick question.
Yeah.
The girl that you were talking about in Quicksand, is this your girl that you're referring to?
You got it. Yeah, you got it.
You got her back?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, yay. Congratulations. Yeah. Yay.
Some happy endings, even though the books don't feel like happy endings. But and so anyway, I was down there. We were just getting out of LA from in the cut beach town in Mexico. Just sounded like a better place to be with this thing coming and lockdowns or whatever. I didn't want to be in the city.
Right.
So my father was like, yeah, come on down. And I get down there, and then the next day he comes back from the doctor and he's sick. And so we stayed in to help him. My girl stayed, thankfully. What a fucking trooper she was. And it was a few reasons. One of them was he needed the help. No family and friends was going to come down from the States. Him and his girl at the time were kind of already splitting up. He just gotten out of jail a couple of years ago. He had a rough go of it. He just got divorced from his third wife a few years before, and he needed the help. And regardless of where our status of a relationship was, I wasn't going to leave the man high and dry. But a big drive for me was my ego that I thought had been destroyed into millions of pieces from many, many ayahuasca ceremonies, which I discussed in my first book. But there was still this part of me that, my father is a tough guy, and as tough as I am, I'll never be tough like that dude, especially to his own look. So he was, always looking down on me, like not looking down, but maybe you can't do this. You're not strong enough. You're not smart enough. You're not going to be capable of this. So there was this drive in me, this ego drive, where I was going to do it. I was going to do for him what he didn't do for his own father. They didn't have a very great relationship, and I was going to be close to him and help him. And I was like, and I'm doing what no one else is capable or willing to do. And that's like, it's like, I'll show you, which is kind of a selfish reason to do it, but nonetheless a reason. Right. But also, like I said initially, I knew he needed the help, and as fucked up as anything might have ever been, I was never not going to help this man. And my aunt, one of his sisters, told me, she's like, look, you should do it. You know, you're going to be mad. You're going to be screaming crazy shit at each other. You're going to hate every minute of it, but you will have no regrets when it's over. And when he died like I was holding him at like midnight when me and him alone at the house. It was, you know, from that moment on, I don't have any regrets. She was right. It is miserable as it got, which it got fucking miserable, but it was also hilarious and fun. And there was some touching moments. I'm very glad I did it.
I'm happy.
So anyway, to answer your fucking question, sorry, long story short.
No, I wanted you to share this with everybody.
You know, adverse situations, sad moments, stress, they can cause big inspirational drives within you creatively. So now I had some shit to write about. So when I wasn't cleaning up vomit or shit or carrying a man to chemo or screaming at each other, I was fucking writing what was going on, but still using my dark comedic lens, this Irish wake, you know, this humor.
Yeah, explain that to me. Like
my last name is Fraczek because my father's Polish, but my mom's family is Irish, and Irish people have a long history of being oppressed, raped, pillaged, ran, controlled even to this day by foreign nations. It's a dark history. They've been starved. There was a genocide that killed almost half the population. I mean, it's a dark history, but they're a beautiful, jovial, persistent people. And if you go to an Irish wake before the funeral, it's a very sad event. There's a lot of tears, but there's lots of jokes and fun stories are told, bigging the person up who passed, and then also still busting their balls, even if they're dead, and laughing and crying. And it's a celebratory way to deal with the pain. And even in Irish the diaspora, there's conflicting arguments of, is this actually hurting us that we use this humor as a survival tactic? Or some people will say, no, it's the only way we've made it so many years. And I always found that really beautiful. And it's just how my mom's family is. And I can't help it. So we'll be at funerals or things or awkward, sad situations, or arguments will turn into laughter quick. And it's a survival tactic. And that's what gets me through things. So that's how I write.
Yeah. So your writing is similar to that.
Precisely. Sorry, that was so long-winded. Jesus. I was talking about that off, and then
it's fine because, you know, like I mentioned at the beginning, we were going to talk about that Irish humor, which I don't really know a lot about, not because I'm Jewish, which doesn't mean that I don't know about Irish humor, but I've always talked about that dark, you know, people refer to it a lot. And so for Jewish people, it's the guilt, you know, it's always the guilt. And, you know, I think that if we can find more humor and stuff, like, why not?
Yeah.
It's hard.
That just saves my life. I mean, on social media, I'm either promoting books or writing pieces or my podcast, or I'm posting hilarious shit. I'm not really doing anything else there. And I get a lot of people, you know, who message me like, oh man, I loved your book, or your podcast was so funny or helpful. And there's some people who like just love the jokes and the memes. But it's not just, haha, you made me laugh. People will be like, yo, dude, I fucking had the worst day of work, but I look at your page and I laugh.
Yeah.
Or some weird shit like that. And I know that might sound trivial in comparison to the artistic shit I do, but it means a lot to me because I'm using this humor for me selfishly first before anybody else, you know?
Right. So you're going through all of this with your dad as a writer. You're like, I'm going to write all this stuff down just because that's just what you do.
Yeah.
You write it down.
It'll help me deal with it.
It helped you deal with it. Right. So what do you think by writing this and writing your other book, when you're writing it and you decide to make it a book, do you think about what are people going to take from this, or are people going to enjoy this? Or do you just, how do you feel about that? Because that,
you know, I got asked this in an interview recently, not the same thing, but something about what do I want people to take from my writing? And I told them, I don't want them to take anything. I want them to read it and take it as they do. You know, an artist, you have intentions maybe when you do some pieces. I really would love somebody to see this angle or this point I'm making, but everyone's going to take it differently. It's subjective. It's up for interpretation. And, you know, some people just laugh at some of my stories. They don't even get the serious part. And that's fine. That's fine. That's a big element to it. Some people maybe miss all the humor and they only see the sad parts.
Right.
But whoever you're taking it, if whether you're laughing at me or laughing with me, it's cool because I write for myself first and then I write for everybody else. And I'm going to do it anyway. So there's certain chapters I was like, I really hope people kind of get. So this one, I maybe sprinkle a little social commentary and I might, whatever, maybe a political comment in there, really just in my storytelling. And I would hope somebody would see it, but if they don't, they don't. And I mean, if someone like misinterpreted my shit on some crazy degree, like Son of Sam killer was going around shooting dogs in the name of my book, I might take up an issue with it. But other than that, you know, people take what they want and really take what you need. You're going to take what you need. Your brain's in a certain place and you're reading my book. You just lost your parent. You might connect with that. You might be, you know, dealing with I'm trying to get sober. I need to drink some ayahuasca, or maybe I'm like looking to calm my ego down or whatever, or, you know, get a second wind in life. Wherever you're at in life and where your brain's at, your heart's at, you're going to look at my book and notice something different.
I love that. I really love that. And you're so confident about saying it too, which I really, really like that. Is that the way you wrote this book? Is it similar where it's a bunch of stories?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Short
Same
stories
thing where you could pick it up anywhere, like in the middle.
It all ties together, but yeah, you can pick it up anywhere. And I stick poems in between every 4 chapters. Is a way they break up the flow, which I like, but it's still pertinent to it. It's not abstract from the rest of it. They allow me to say some things that a whole long chapter wouldn't, in a different manner. And so I like that. And I'm big into poetry. And I think when people hear the word poetry now, they like, you know, they even think of like slam poetry, which is
it's hip hop, right? It's all that.
Yeah, that's where I'm taking it from. Whether it's Tupac or Charles Bukowski, you know,
right,
or James Joyce, like that's the kind of shit I want to make poetry that is contemporary, that doesn't sound like some old Ansel Adams, you know, painting that you're interpreting. I want it to feel like now and speak to people, and it can still be fun and poetic. It doesn't have to sound like some old Yee Carroll from the 1800s.
Right.
You know?
All right. So I didn't prepare you for this, but can you read anything from the book? Do you have the book handy?
I can. Give me 2 seconds. I'm going to grab it.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I meant to ask you that before.
No, not a problem.
Okay, thank you. I figured you would have the book nearby.
All right. I could read a poem, or I could read the opening of a chapter if somebody wants to get sucked into something.
Okay. Suck me into what you think is like
a good synopsis of the book.
Yes, exactly, Jake. Very good.
I have doing a lot of press for stuff, so you know they always want a synopsis. So I'll start. This is the second chapter. It's called "Say Goodnight to the Bad Guy."
This is from the waiting room.
Yes. So you can see it right here. Happy endings are for Hollywood and massage parlors. Sometimes the cookie crumbles in fucked up ways. I slur out those words while stumbling around my friend Emilio's kitchen, hunting for some saltines to soak up the residue of last night's concoctions. That sounds like the opening line to a Jake the Snake chapter I hear from the living room. Emilio ain't lied when he spoke. He never lies. Neither does the world. It casually flashes harsh realities, bare like strippers in the French Quarter who will lure you off the street with nothing but a thong and a smile. Now I'm back in Mexico. We are back in Mexico. How strange. This man has so much life, so much fight, such a lust for more. It's hard not to admire that about Stotch. Can I get you anything? No. More water? You want to smoke a joint? No. Jake, I'm fine. Want me to put a movie on or some TV? He answers back with a blank stare directed at the wall. Watching him lay on his bed bruises my spirit. With no background noise to distract me, I fixate on the saddest look on a face I've ever seen. It's like dried cement, not going anywhere. Stotch wants to live to the fullest of life, yet he's condemned to die. Many people in my life, family and friends alike, duel with depression, suicidal thoughts, the occasional fantasies of wanting to shut it off. Shit, I wanted to shut it off. I tried twice. Desperately wanting to continue, he's been dealt other cards. Time evaporates. I sit here healthy on social media posting memes with depressive undertones. An indescribable guilt follows me like my shadow, and the cookie crumbles as so. And there's more to the chapter, but that's just the first couple paragraphs.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. It's very powerful.
Thank you.
Your father's name was
Stotch. No, Stotch is a Polish nickname for the Polish name Stanislaw or Stanley, which is not. I changed everybody's names in the book except for mine and my last name. Or I didn't change my first and last name, so that is not his real name. His real name was Joseph, but his nickname was Skip. So I gave him the name Stanislaw, and his nickname is Stotch.
Okay,
I
because
won't reveal everyone else's real names because they're alive still. But
my dad's name was Stanton.
Oh, nice.
And his nickname was Stosh.
Oh, nice. Yeah, yeah. Whereabouts in Eastern Europe was he from? Do you know?
Russia.
Okay. Yeah. So my grandparents were Polish, but my great grandmother was Ukrainian, and I have Russian blood too. You know,
Yeah.
lines blurred a lot back in the day.
Yes, they really, really did get blurred. Yeah, my grandfather was from Poland, and
Okay.
my father's parents were both little tiny Russian people.
Oh, nice. My family
Little,
was giant Polish people, like fucking tall and big, and
really.
yeah,
Yeah, I can't tell. It's so funny when you're on Zoom, you can't
yeah.
tell
You
how
have no,
big.
how if you had to guess, Jody, how tall do you think I am?
Well, you said you were big,
Okay.
so I'm going to say that you're over 6 feet.
I am 6'2.5", 6'3" on a good day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And most people think I'm 5'8".
I was gonna say 5'9".
I'm not even 5'1".
Really? Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. It's funny when people meet me in person, they're like, wait a minute, I thought you were tall.
Must be one hell of a dance partner though, that you people can just do twirls and all those. I don't
Well,
even know
that's the whole thing. Yeah. They move me around. So if somebody was interested, they're going through something, right? Something similar to what you do, anything in life, and they want to write about it. What advice would you give them?
This is something I do myself, and I think it's a healthy when, you know, sometimes when you're doing something creative, you're like trying to make it so perfect. Initially, just get it on the fucking page. Just type the thoughts out. That's what I do. If I don't have my computer in front of me, if I don't have a moleskin in my pocket, I whip my phone out and I'll start writing the notes. And it doesn't have to be clear and concise. It's just the thoughts, the ideas, whether it's a poetic sentence or the sentiment, the feelings I just need to get out of my head so the voices quiet down. I get it down first. Then you come back and revisit it. Then if you're trying to write it for more than just yourself, then you can clean it up, formulate it. Am I using the same word twice in 2 sentences? How do I just trim it down and neaten it up? But get it down, get it out of your head, because when it's out of your head and you can read it, look at it physically, I think that's when you can start to process it. You can heal a little bit from it. And then you've got the writing down. And that's that first step. And the next step is fixing it up, starting to get the fucking first couple of lines. That can be the hardest part.
Yeah, you make it sound so simple because you're so confident about what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I see so many people writing books all the time. And I wonder, how do they do that? How do they get all these words down on a page? And why do you think somebody will be interested in what you have to say?
I think it's easy to get words on a page. I think it's harder to get good words on a page or less bad words. There is so many prolific authors, and some are really good, and some of them, I'm like, yeah, you write a lot of books. Fuck, these things are terrible. I could sit. It's like it's just you sat and wrote. Like I could write, but do you want to make it good? Like I'm hypercritical of myself. So everything I'm doing, I'm taking out anything I don't think is good. Whether I'm cutting the chapters down in the book or the sentences in the paragraph or the words in the sentence. I'm trying to take out everything I don't think is necessary, is repetitive, isn't good. And I just don't want it to start and end. I want it to flow in a certain way. I want it to grab you. Like when I listen to music and albums, the outline of an album and the track listing order has always been such a beautifully interesting aspect to me. Or when you watch a movie, I want my book to flow like that too, or a chapter too. And I think, you got to just get it down. And then maybe I come back and I find the perfect opening sentence. Maybe after I see this whole story I've written, I'm like, okay, this is how I got to start it. Or sometimes I've got the opening sentence and where do I go from there? What is this line? This is like an arbitrary line, but it's so poetically beautiful. Oh, it makes me think of this story in my head. Now I got to write the rest of it. I'm using like puzzle pieces basically.
Well, I can't wait to read your books.
Thank you.
Especially this one, because we talked, you lost your dad. I lost my mom in December. And so and I'm sorry for your loss too. I'm sure your dad is smiling right now. To find your books, where can somebody find your books?
You can go on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. There's Kindle editions. It's online, some other smaller retailers, Walmarts, select stores, depending on what city. If you're in a major city, yeah. If you're in a smaller town or city, probably not. But if you follow me on social media at Jake Fraczek, that's at JakeFraczek, or at Damaged Goods Podcast. The link's in my bio. But go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle. The audiobook for The Waiting Room is coming now soon. The audiobook for Quicksand's out now too. If you go to get that, you can hear me read. It's read by me, not some fucking.
I love it. I love it. I love it because you've got a great voice.
Thank you.
Before we leave, we have 2 minutes. So you got 2 minutes to answer this question. What does it mean? Because you are so authentic. You are so fearless. What does it mean for you to like live a fearlessly authentic life?
It means being authentic to myself and what I want and what I need, where my heart's at, not doing anything that's, there's a quick buck in it, or maybe there's a little light that gets shine on you, or people are asking you to do it and it just doesn't feel right. I'm not doing it. I want to sleep. When my head hits the pillow, when I look in the mirror, I want to be happy and proud of everything. And you're going to have some regrets, but artistically, I'm going to make the right choices. And I'm just going to always be myself, for better or worse. I'm not going to shove it down everyone's throat, but I'm not going to make apologies for who I am. Maybe what I do, I could be wrong for, but who I am, I want to be proud of that. And that's being fierce, authentic.
I love that. Thank you. Jake Fraczek.
Yeah.
Jake the Snake.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being on the show. Go and check out The Waiting Room. Quicksand came out before that. I can't wait to read these books. You've been so much fun to have on the show. Thank you so much for making the time.
Anytime. Thank you.
And thank you everybody for tuning in today to Fearlessly Authentic. Until next week, go live a fearlessly authentic life. Bye.